Javed Ahmed Rizvi from Department of Petroleum Studies, Aligarh Muslim University. Today we are going to discuss a very important topic, calculation of percentage crystallinity for the polymers from the DSC data. Calculation of percentage crystallinity is important in case of when people are doing some research work related to the mechanical properties of the polymer. So crystallinity is an important function and we need to determine the crystallinity. So let us start with a very simple question about the crystallinity, that what is the crystallinity of the polymer. So crystallinity of the polymer can be defined as the ordered crystal structure of the polymer, and on the basis of this we can divide the polymer in two categories. One is the semi-crystalline polymer, second is the amorphous polymer. Amorphous polymers are basically random polymer. There is no arrangement or order of the chain packing, it's all random. But in case of semi-crystalline polymer, it is composed of the crystalline structure and amorphous structure. That's why it is known as the semi-crystalline polymers. So the regions which are having crystal order structure, they are known as the crystalline region, and the random order is the amorphous region. So now what will happen when we will cool down a molten polymer? In the molten condition, both the polymer, whether it is semi-crystalline polymer or the amorphous polymer, both the polymer is in the completely random form, means there is no crystal structure during the molten stage. However, some polymers such as liquid crystalline polymer LCPs are available that retain their original crystal structure during the melt state, but we are not discussing that part. We are considering just the normal polymers that loses their crystal structure upon melting. So we are having two cases here, the semi-crystalline molten polymer, and this one is the amorphous polymer, which is the molten. Now when we cool down this polymer, upon cooling, what will happen? The amorphous polymer will solidify into amorphous solid, whereas crystalline polymer, during the solidification, some part of the chain will try to pack in a closed lattice space, and this is known as the crystalline or crystallite regions. There are some chains that will go inside the crystalline region, and they may go outside and the amorphous region, and they may again go to some crystalline region. So one chain may be some portion of the chain may be shared by the crystalline region and some portion by the amorphous region. So that's why this is known as the semi-crystalline polymer. So upon cooling we will get a solid polymer. Solid polymer may exhibit its property depending upon its classification. Amorphous polymer will be completely random in the nature, whereas the semi-crystalline polymer, it will show the amorphous and crystalline both the region. So now our aim is to calculate the fraction of the crystalline region or the percentage crystallinity. This calculation of percentage crystallinity is somewhat important in case of when we are studying the mechanical properties of the polymers. So mechanical properties are directly related with the crystallinity. If we will have higher crystallinity, then we will have the better mechanical properties. So it's important to calculate the percentage crystallinity. Second thing, when we will heat the polymer again, then what will happen? The crystalline region will disappear again in the molten form. However, in case of amorphous polymer, since there was no crystalline regions, from amorphous solid it will just go to amorphous melt. One more thing, this crystallization is an exothermic process. During the crystallization, heat will be ejected from the polymer. So it's an exothermic process because the polymer chain will liberate some heat and it will form a stable crystal structure which is a thermodynamically stable structure. So in order to achieve a thermodynamically stable structure, it will release or eject some of its enthalpy in the form of heat, and this heat is known as the heat of crystallization. And when we'll melt the semi-crystalline material, this crystal structure will be broken by the absorption of the heat, and this process, melting, or we can call it fusion, melting or fusion, is the process where my crystalline regions will be destroyed, and that process is endothermic. So during the melting, heat will be absorbed by the polymer, and during the crystallization, heat will be liberated from the polymer. Okay, so we can have some example of thermoplastic polymers: polyethylene, high density polyethylene. Polypropylene is a highly crystalline polymer known as the PP or IPP, isotactic polypropylene. Nylons, nylon 6, nylon 6, nylon 11, nylon 12. There is a whole family of nylon. They are crystalline materials. Then we have polyesters such as polyethylene terephthalate, PET, or polybutylene terephthalate, PBT, and there are many other crystalline polymers. So we are having a large number of semi-crystalline polymers, thermoplastics. And amorphous thermoplastics are polystyrene. Polystyrene is one of the well-known amorphous polymer because of the amorphous nature. They are crystalline. Polycarbonate is again an engineering thermoplastic which is amorphous by nature. Acrylic, polymethyl methacrylate, is again a very high strength amorphous polymer. And one thing is common in all these three polymers: they are transparent in nature. And other than these three polymers, we are having many other amorphous thermoplastics. Okay, so now how to calculate the percentage crystallinity by the DSC. DSC means differential scanning calorimetry. This is a process in which we are observing the amount of the heat flow from the material or into the material with respect to the temperature. Okay, so as I already explained you that during the heating process, the crystal structure will be destroyed during the melting, and the amount of the heat absorbed by the polymer for the completion of its melting process is known as the heat of the fusion. Another thing, I have told you that crystallization is crystallization is exothermic process, and during crystallization, heat will be liberated from the polymer. So any calculation regarding the percentage crystallinity based upon the heat of crystallization is given here by the formula, where delta HC, heat of crystallization, this delta HC is the amount of the heat coming out of the material or liberated from the material with respect to the heat liberated from the material for the same polymer, if that particular polymer is 100% crystalline. So you have to keep it in mind that delta HC naught is the value of the heat of the crystallization for a polymer which is 100% crystalline. Normally it's very difficult to get 100% crystalline polymer, but you can find the value of delta HC in some of the polymer data handbooks. People have conducted experiment. They have fabricated material with almost 100% crystallinity, and they calculated the amount of the heat liberating from that particular polymers. So it is referred as delta HC naught, heat of crystallization for 100% crystalline form of the polymer. So here we can see this delta Hc over delta Hc naught is a fraction. Delta Hc is the heat liberated from the material which is not 100% crystalline, and this delta Hc naught is the heat liberated from the material which is 100% crystalline. So in any case this fraction is going to be less than 1 because delta Hc will be less than delta Hc naught, and when we'll multiply it by 100 we'll convert into percentage. So this is known as the percentage crystallinity. Similarly, when we are calculating the percentage crystallinity delta, when we are calculating the percentage crystallinity X percent through the heat of fusion or heat of melting data, delta HF is the heat of the fusion or heat absorbed by the material or heat absorbed by the crystalline region of the thermoplastic or material during the melting, whereas delta HF naught is the heat absorbed by the thermoplastic during the melting process, and this particular polymer delta HF naught is 100% crystalline. So again we are having one fraction delta HF over delta HF naught, where the value of the delta HF is larger than the value of delta HF because this heat of the crystallization this heat of the fusion is for 100% crystalline polymer, where delta HF is the heat of the fusion for our sample. So we will compare the heat of fusion of our sample with respect to standard data for that material which is 100% crystalline, and we'll get the value of delta HF naught from the polymer data handbooks or some other literature, and when we multiply it by 100 we will calculate the X percentage, the percentage crystallinity. So we can calculate percentage crystallinity based upon the heat of the melting as well as based upon the heat of the crystallization. For example, the delta HF naught heat of the fusion for 100% crystalline polypropylene is given as 207 joules per gram, and this is the reference. 207 joules per gram means to melt the 1 gram of polypropylene, isotactic polypropylene, which is 100% crystalline, we need to put 207 joules of energy into it, then it will be completely melted. Again the same example for the isotactic polypropylene, the delta Hc naught, the heat of crystallization for 100% crystalline polymer is 163 joules per gram. That's mean when 100% crystalline isotactic polypropylene will crystallize, it will eject or liberate 163 joules per gram of the material. Okay, so this is the basic of calculation of percentage crystallinity based upon the DSC value. Through the DSC, the differential scanning calorimeter, we can obtain the value of delta Hc as well as we can obtain the value of delta HF. So we will be focusing on estimation of delta Hc and delta HF in the coming slides. Okay. So before jumping to estimate the value of delta HF and delta Hc from the DSC data, we'll briefly go through the functioning of DSC. I hope most of you are already aware about the functioning of the DSC, but just to recollect, we can recollect by saying that there are two identical ovens and two identical pans placed into the oven. One pan is is the reference pan, and reference pan is empty and is of the same thermal property as my sample pan. Inside the sample pan we'll put a very little amount of the polymer, just few milligrams of the polymer, and we'll seal the sample and reference pan. Now a computer controlled heating will be there, and both the ovens will be heated in such a way that the temperature of both the ovens is same. But because of the presence of the polymer in sample pan, the amount of the heat absorbed by the sample pan will be higher than the reference pan, and this difference is known as the heat flow. This difference is the heat flow. So we can find a graph as the output of my DSC result, and this graph is basically between the heat flow rate versus temperature. My temperature is on the x-axis and heat flow rate is on the y-axis, and heat flow rate is the differential amount of heat being provided to material, and the unit of heat flow rate is watt per gram. Sometime you may find milliwatt per milligram, or even you can sometime find milliwatt, only milliwatt. So when you are having the heat flow rate only in milliwatt, then you have to divide it with the mass of sample inside the pan. In most of the DSC data, when you will go through the first few line of the DSC data, you will find the value of the mass of the polymer sample taken into the polymer. So in order to find the heat flow rate, you have to divide the milliwatt per milligram. Okay, now we are starting from this point. First of all, we are increasing the temperature. Temperature is on the x-axis, so temperature is increasing. As we are increasing the temperature, of course this is the heating curve, so that we are increasing the temperature. Near the melting point of my polymer, I'll observe a peak in the endothermic direction. This is my endothermic direction. If heat flow rate is on the negative side, it is the endothermic, means heat is absorbed by the material. And if heat flow rate is on the positive side, that it will be exothermic reaction, and positive side peak will indicate that heat is being released by the material. So we know that the melting is a endothermic process, and the melting peak will be on the downward side, or we can say towards the endothermic side. In some of the DSC data, you may find that endothermic direction is on the top and exothermic is on the bottom. So don't worry, you have to just keep in the mind, in my melting peak will always be in endothermic direction. Okay, so this entire peak represents the melting peak, and this is endothermic, and the area under this curve will represent indirectly delta HF. Delta HF is the heat of the fusion. Sometimes we can write it delta HM also, heat of melting. Okay, so once heat is given to the polymer and polymer is completely melt in the molten form, and the peak melting temperature is indicated here as a Tm, the peak melting temperature. And so at this point where my peak is ending, this point all the polymer chains will completely melted. Now we can increase the temperature further, a little increase in the temperature, just to ensure that the melting is completed. Okay, now after this point we will switch from heating mode to cooling mode, and we'll circulate the coolant inside the DSC equipment. So when we continue the cooling, then temperature will start falling, and we can see my blue curve, which is representing the cooling curve. It's moving towards my left hand direction, which is the direction of decreasing temperature, and temperature will keep on decreasing. The moment it will reach the crystallization temperature, we can observe a peak just similar to the my melting peak. In the opposite direction we'll have the exothermic crystallization peak, and the area under this curve will indirectly represent the heat of the crystallization. That's means this much of heat will be liberated by the polymer in order to attain thermodynamic stable structure. Okay, we know that when entropy is high, stability is less. So in order to have more stable structure or higher stable structure, we have to reduce the entropy of the system. So some amount of heat has to be ejected by the material to obtain a thermodynamic stable structure. Okay, so this peak represents the heat of the crystallization. Area under this peak represents the heat of crystallization, and the peak crystallization temperature is here. When we go to the x-axis, we will find the TC. TC means the crystallization temperature, or sometimes we can refer it as a peak crystallization temperature. Okay, this is a schematic of DSC equipment. We can see just similar to this diagram. This is a more elaborated form of this diagram. It shows the inlet of sample gas, it shows the inlet for the purge gas, inlet for the cooling gas, then heating plate, cooling plate, temperature sensor, PT100, thermocouple connections, like that. So this is how a DSC equipment will look like from inside. And this is a typical DSC equipment. This particular DSC equipment is of Perkin-Elmer make. So you may find it in your lab, thermal characterization lab. Okay, we will little more about this heat flow rate versus temperature diagram. We have already learned that this is the heating curve, and this peak is the heat of fusion peak, and area under this peak will indirectly represent the heat of melting or heat of the fusion. Why I am saying that indirectly? Because you cannot obtain the heat of crystallization by estimating the area inside the peak, because you know the heat of crystallization unit is joules per gram. But if you'll find the unit of area under this peak, this is the watt degree centigrade per gram, because we know the heat flow rate is watt per gram and temperature is degree centigrade. So area under the peak is always multiplication of my xy parameters. So here my y parameters is heat flow rate, unit watt per gram, and temperature is on my x-axis degree centigrade. So the unit of this area will be watt degree centigrade per gram, which is not the heat of melting. So we have to keep it in mind. Okay, now we can further introduce two more notation to this peak. Here this peak, here this curve is just started deviating from its baseline. So this particular point will be known as TMI or TFI. M stands for melting, F stands for fusion. So this subscript we can any subscript we can use, TFI or TMI, TM end or TFN, no problem. So I am using TMI. That's mean melting will start from this temperature. TMI is the temperature at which the smallest chains will be melted, and as we increase the temperature, larger and larger chain will start will become mobile inside the polymer mass, and slowly at this point where my curve is ending and again coming back to the baseline is my TM end, means the temperature where my melting is getting completed. Okay, and similarly TCI is the crystallization temperature initial, means this is the initial temperature where crystallization will start and crystallization will continue and it will end. The process of the crystallization will end at this point. So this point is known as TC end. So we can see TCI is the temperature at which largest chain will become stabilized and it will form a crystal structure, and TC end where smallest chain will crystallize and crystallization will end up at this point. Okay, so as I said, the area under this curve is not the heat of crystallization, or here area under the fusion peak is not the heat of melting or heat of fusion. Then how we can calculate the heat of melting or heat of crystallization? So this is the way how we can calculate the heat of crystallization. In order to calculate the value of delta Hc, we have to divide the area under the crystallization peak with the cooling rate. Cooling rate is the rate at which my temperature will be reduced. Okay, so this is the cooling rate, and typically cooling rate is expressed in the unit of degree centigrade per minute. For example, 10 degree centigrade per minute, 20 degree centigrade per minute, 30 degree centigrade per minute. These are the typical cooling rates while conducting the DSC characterization. So area under the crystallization peak, as I already said, is watt degree centigrade per gram, and the unit of the cooling rate is degree centigrade per second. You have to convert degree centigrade per minute into degree centigrade per second. So when we'll put both the unit in the equation, we'll finally find that the ultimate unit is watt second per gram, and here watt second is nothing but joule. So we can say the heat of the crystallization in joules per gram we can obtain by dividing the area under the crystallization peak with cooling rate. Correct? So this you have to keep in mind. You have to divide the area under the crystallization peak with the cooling rate. I have seen many people, they are confused. They are just considering the area under the crystallization peak or area under the melting peak, and they are considering is at the heat of the crystallization or heat of the fusion respectively, but this is not right. In order to obtain heat of crystallization or heat of fusion or heat of melting, you have to divide the area under the curve with the corresponding cooling rate or heating rate. In case of heat of fusion, you have to divide with the heating rate. So here is the formula how you can calculate the heat of the melting: delta HF or delta HM, area under the melting peak divided by the heating rate, and same way you will find the unit joules per gram. So this is the correct way how you can calculate the heat of fusion or heat of the crystallization using DSC data. Okay, now coming to the sample preparation. While people are using this DSC characterization to find out the percentage crystallinity, basically most of the people are using injection molded specimen. Here this is a tensile dog bone specimen for ASTM 638, ASTM D638, and this is the molded sample, injection molded sample, and here is the injection point. Some people may use some time casted sample or sample cutted from the sheet or some film also. So that doesn't make any difference. Sample preparation is the same for any kind of thermoplastic sample, but we are just considering this injection molded sample because it has certain point to keep in mind. So you need only 5 to 20 milligrams of this sample required for DSC testing. Okay, one thing. Second thing is that you should understand that the crystallinity is at point number 1, at point number 2 and point number 3 may be different. It is not like that the crystallinity at each and every point of this sample would be same. Crystallinity near the injection point or gate location may be different. Crystallinity at this region, neck region, will be different, and the crystallinity at the extreme region will be difficult. So it is a good practice to always cut the sample, different sample from the same location, and extract the few milligrams of sample from the same location. You should not collect this sample in one sample. You collect few milligrams of the polymer from location 1, in some sample you collect it from location 3, and in some from location 2. So it will introduce some kind of experimental error in your observation. If you are considering point number 2, so in all this sample you have to collect the material, or you have to cut or chip off 5 to 20 milligram of material only at the point number 2. Okay, and second thing, crystallinity may also vary with respect to thickness. As I told you, crystallinity may change lengthwise and obviously with the thickness wise. Why thickness wise? Because if we look at the cross section of this sample, when polymer is being injected inside the cavity of the injection mold, what happens? A very thin layer of the polymer which is in the contact of the steel of the mold will immediately be frozen on this side and this side also, followed by another layer of the polymer which is known as the skin layer on both the side, and the core polymer. Core polymer will remain hot and it will keep on moving forward. So this is the flow front which is moving forward. But frozen layer means layer that is immediately frozen by the contact of the mold with the polymer. So in this region, polymer chains will not find enough time to get crystallized. So crystallinity in the frozen layer will be much less. In skin layer also the crystallinity is hindered by the rapid cooling in this region, but at the core of the polymer, this polymer gets sufficient time to cool, so polymer chain can crystallize, and you will find the highest crystallinity at the center of the polymer, where minimum crystallinity at the frozen layer, means at the outer skin of your molded sample. So this is how crystallinity can vary along the thickness of the sample. So this is also very important to keep in mind. You have to extract your specimen only at the same location, and thickness wise also, if you are cutting chip of your specimen, if you are cutting chip at the center, collect always from the center. It should not happen that you, in some sample you collect polymer from the center, in some sample you collect from the skin polymer, and in some sample you collect from the frozen layer. They will introduce experimental error, a great experimental error in your observation. Okay, so lengthwise as well as thickness wise, similar location you have to obtain the material amount of the material 5 to 20 milligram at the same location. So this is the important thing that you have to keep in mind while preparing the sample for the DSC testing. Okay, now role of the second heating curve. This is very important. Second heating is very important because the objective, there may be two different objectives of DSC scan. If we want to estimate the crystallinity of the molded component, means the injection molded or compression molded or any kind of the molded specimen, so first heating curve is sufficient, because my first heating curve will give me the crystallinity of the molded component. Molded means processed, whether it is injection molded or extrusion or blow molding or calendering or any other process. So first heating curve will give me the property of the molded component. In some cases we may be interested to find out the crystallinity of the material itself. Material means the thermoplastic material used for the manufacture of molded component. Means I don't want to calculate the crystallinity of the molded component. I am interested to know the crystallinity of the material. Material may be HDP or polypropylene or some other material. So for estimation of the crystallinity of the material, we have to go for second heating curve, because during the first heating, the previous melt history, which is the representation of my molding history, will be eliminated by first heating, and during the second heating the pure material properties will be observed. So we can see this is my first heating curve represented by the red line, and here is my melting peak. Then I started cooling the material is cooled, and this is my crystallization peak, and just little below from my end of my crystallization temperature, I can again start heating the material. So from here I am again starting heating the material, and this time the melting peak is little offset from the first heating curve. So this deviation in the melting peak is because my first melting peak is representing the property of the molded component, whereas my second melting peak is representing the property of the material. Now you may ask why the property of the molded component will be different than the property of the polymer. So reason is that you may alter the property or thermal properties of the polymer by changing the process condition. For example, polypropylene is almost 60 to 65% crystalline material. Material wise it's 60%, 65% crystalline. But if you melt the polypropylene and immediately quench, means you just put it into icy water or liquid nitrogen, then what will happen, the molded component will not attain the crystallinity of 60-65% crystallinity. It will have only 1 or 2%, or it may be completely amorphous also. Okay, so by the cooling rate the crystallinity will change. So that's why in case of processing, for example injection molding, extrusion, calendering, blow molding, my material observe different cooling rate. For example, in injection molding the cooling rate is very fast. Cooling rate may be few hundred degrees centigrade per minute. Typically it's 500-600 degrees centigrade per minute, because we all know that the cooling gets completed within 20-25 seconds in a injection molding cycle. So if my temperature of the polymer is, let's say, 250 degrees centigrade and it is being cooled at 40 degree centigrade, so the difference is 210 degrees centigrade. 210 degrees centigrade in 20 seconds. So you can find out how much is it's few hundred degrees centigrade per minute. Okay, so what is the moral of the story? Moral of the story is that the heating rate or cooling rate during the polymer processing are much higher than the heating or cooling rate of my DSC equipment. That's why the second heating will be different than the first heating, because first heating is related to the molded component and second heating is related to my material property. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. So we have just to keep it in mind that the second heating curve will give me the material property and the first heating curve will give me the properties of molded component. Okay, this is a typical second heating DSC scan for isotactic polypropylene material. You can see that the first heating curve represented by the green line is having peak melting temperatures somewhere at 171 degrees centigrade. Okay, but the second heating, which is again a blue color line, dark blue color line, now the heating peak melting temperature is 150 151 degrees centigrade. 151 degrees centigrade. So there is almost 20 degrees centigrade difference of 20 degrees centigrade. So why this difference is taking place? In this particular case, earlier the crystal structure of the polypropylene was the alpha crystal structure, and the melting point was much higher for alpha crystal structure. But in case of second heating, when heating was slow, and then we can see that the beta crystal structure is being formed, and the peak melting temperature of 151 degrees centigrade was obtained. So this is actually my material. My material is a beta phase polymer, but by changing the processing condition, it was converted into the alpha polypropylene, and the properties are much different. You can see it is going to be melt around 151 degrees centigrade, and here the peak melting temperature is 171 degrees centigrade. So there is a difference of about 20 degrees centigrade in the melting point. This is a huge difference as far as polymer is concerned. Okay, so this is the importance of second heating curve. Material property will always be estimated from my second heating DSC scan. Okay, I hope it's clear. Now, how to obtain or how to use DSC results? When you will perform a DSC experiment, or when you will give your sample for a DSC testing to some characterization lab, the person who will conduct this test will give you the result in two forms. Either he will give you the screenshot of the DSC curve like this. This is the typical screenshot taken from the DSC software. Okay, this is just to use to find out the peak temperatures and like that. This is not of much use. We are basically concerned with the data that is obtained from the DSC result, and this is known as the data file. Data file may be in the form of CSV, comma separated file, comma separated values, and this is the file that will open in the Excel software. In some of the DSC equipment, you may find that the data is being given to you in the form of a notepad file or .txt file. So I have given you the screenshot of both the format. This is the format of the CSV file, which is opening inside the Excel, and this is the format of the notepad file, which is opening, which will look like this. Okay, so we'll obtain this data. If we'll plot, we'll find the plot like this, but our purpose is to find out the value of delta HC, heat of the crystallization, and the value of delta HF, heat of the fusion. So in order to obtain the heat of crystallization or heat of the fusion, we have to find out the area under the heating or area under the crystallization peak. Okay, so I'll prefer you to use Origin software for this purpose, and I'll give you example how to calculate the area under the curve using Origin software. I have seen a lot of people are worried how to calculate the area under the curve. Some people are using some frugal technique, like they are taking the printout printout of the DSC result on a chart paper, and then just counting how many small blocks are inside the curve. So that method is not very convenient. and accurate. Use of the Origin software and to calculate area under the peak using Origin is much more sophisticated way to do this. So I'll suggest of all of you to use Origin software. Okay. This part we will learn how to calculate area under the curve from Origin graph. Okay, so let's start the Origin. Okay, this is the Origin software. This is my Origin software for the plotting the graph and calculation of area under the peak. Okay, so here is my data. This is the data file in which I am having my heat flow versus temperature data for isotactic polypropylene. So I am opening this CSV file. So as I have already told you that the CSV file will open in the Excel software. So Excel is opening up and data is in the CSV file, and we will copy the data from the CSV file and put it into the Origin software for the plot and calculation of the area under the curve. But before doing that, we will look into the CSV file. There are some important information available in the CSV file, and we'll try to see what are those information available regarding the it is not open, just a minute. Okay, now this file is open. So you can see this is a typical DSC data file in CSV format, and there are many informations regarding this test is available. If you try to see it, okay, so you can see here this is the name of the operator who have operated, and this is the time and date when this test was conducted. Okay, and what else? This is the important part. You can find the mass of the sample. As I told you, in some DSC data format, when you will not get the watt per gram or milliwatt per milligram, in that case you have to divide the power data, watt or milliwatt data, with mass of the sample in milligrams or in grams respectively. So here in my case 15.919 milligrams of the polymer was taken as the sample. Then what are the other information available? Okay, this is the heating plan. Here it says that from 25 degrees centigrade to 200 degrees centigrade. This is the heating curve, first heating curve, at the rate of 10 degree centigrade or degree Kelvin per minute. Second is the cooling curve, where polymer will be cooled down from 200 degrees centigrade to 80 degrees centigrade. Since the crystallization of isotactic polypropylene will end around 100 or 95 or 90 degree centigrade, then for the safer side I have chosen 80 degree centigrade. So cool it down from 200 degree centigrade to 80 degree centigrade from 10 degree centigrade or 10 degree Kelvin per minute. Then again the third column represents the second heating graph or second heating data. It will start from 80 degrees centigrade to 200 degrees centigrade per 10 degree Kelvin or 10 degree centigrade per minute. Okay, so this is the first heating, first heating, cooling and second heating. Okay, and what else we are having? See, this is temperature, x-axis is on the temperature, and this is the heat flow. And fortunately we are getting this data in terms of milliwatt per milligram, so we need not to divide the power data with the mass of the sample. Here already it is being divided, so this is the heat flow rate in milliwatt per milligram. You can see milli you can cancel, so this is same unit. Watt per gram or milliwatt per milligram, both are the same unit. So I am starting heating. This is my first heating, cooling, and this column represents the second heating. So right now this is empty because it will start after some time. So from 26.622 degrees centigrade we are increasing the temperature, and you can see temperature is increasing, and we are getting the heat flow data, and just around 80 degrees centigrade. Now this is the my cooling data with respect to x, and this is my second heating data with respect to x. So I am having 1x and 3y data. First y represents the heat flow for the heating, first heating. Second y data represents the cooling, and third y data represents the second heating. Okay, so this is all my data. So I have to create two more columns in my origin data. So how I can create? Just right click and click insert. Again right click and insert. Okay, so you can see there is only one x. Column A represents the x, column B, column C, and column D, they are the y data. Okay, fine. So I can write the name as well. Here x is the temperature, y is my heat flow rate, and copy it, and second is also heat flow rate, and this one is also heat flow rate, and unit temperature is degree centigrade, heat flow milliwatt per milligram, and this is my unit for the cooling and second heating as well. And here I can write some comments. So here I can write first heating, just to remember what this column represents. Second no, sorry, this is the cooling, and this is second heating. Okay, so I have created the columns. Okay, fine. Now copy the data from the CSV file, and we have to just copy the data only. We don't want to copy all this information. We will just copy the data 1 2 3 and go till the end. Select all the numeric data. Okay, up to this, Control C to copy and go to origin, and here just Control V to paste the data. Data is pasted. You can see the first data was at 26.622 degrees centigrade, same, and cooling column representing the cooling and second heating is initially empty because second heating and cooling is limited up to 80 degrees centigrade, so they will start at 80 degrees centigrade. So you can see they are going to start around 79.622, that is around 80 degrees centigrade. So this is all my data that was copied from the CSV file, and now it is being pasted to the origin. Okay, fine. So first of all, I am going to plot between temperature and first heating curve. So to do that, I need to select the column representing the first heating and just right click here, go to the plot, line and line. This is my first heating plot. So you can see here heat flow rate milliwatt per milligram. Upward is the exothermic direction and downward is the endothermic direction. So this is my melting peak. I am getting my melting peak around some 170 degrees centigrade. So I am interested to calculate area under this curve. Okay, with the help of origin we can calculate area under the curve very easily and very accurately. So now let me calculate area under my heating curve, first heating curve, and this first heating curve will give me the enthalpy, heat of fusion for first heating. So I'll go to the analysis tab. Inside the analysis tab you will find peaks and baseline, and you go to peak analyzer, and inside peak analyzer just click on open dialog box. Okay, here are some pre-used format. For example, if you want to calculate the area under the XRD curve or like that, you can make your own template also. Okay, but right now let me open the dialog box. Okay, so this is the peak analyzer dialog box. Just arrange the figures and there is dialog box. Okay, this is the dialog box. Okay, now our goal, it will the first step is the goal. So it is asking you to define a baseline, find and integrate peaks. Okay, so there are many options: integrate peaks, create baseline, subtract baseline, find peak, fit peaks. Okay, so to calculate area under the curve means I have to integrate the peak. So I'll select integrate peak, and recalculate is manual. So just select integrate peaks. Now go to next. In next it will ask you about the baseline. So right now this is a constant baseline, but I can see our baseline is not constant, baseline is changing. So I have to select user defined baseline. Okay, the moment I will select the user defined baseline, some anchoring points will appear on my first hitting curve, and here baseline mode will be user defined, and you have to click snap to spectrum. When you click snap to spectrum, this anchoring point will get snapped to spectrum or the plot. Okay, and the rest everything is fine. So okay, if you want to increase the number of anchoring point, you can increase the number of anchoring point, but right now it appears okay to me. So I'll click next. Okay, here I have to correct the baseline. So how I can correct the baseline? See, right now area under the curve will be area under this peak up to this, but I know that area under the curve should be like this. This line should be little upward. Okay, so how we can do this? We can modify. Just click on the modify and rearrange these anchoring points. So the click and hold at the anchoring point and leave it. It will move to the next point. Click, left click and hold it and bring to the new position. It will come to new position. Okay, likewise this anchoring point I want at this location where my curve is finishing or ending the melting or fusion, and readjust this point, so that this point can come to here. So now this is giving me fine. Now this is my peak and this is a baseline. Okay, so once you are done, you can click done. Okay, if you want to add more anchoring point, just click add, and you can add more anchoring points. So these anchoring points are being added now. again modify, just rearrange this anchoring point. More the number of anchoring point, higher will be the accuracy of the baseline. So just keep them close, and like this, and this is okay. So modification is done, my anchoring points are fine, and now I should move to the next. Next, it is asking you to subtract the baseline and auto rescale. So click auto subtract baseline and auto rescale and click next. So it will rescale and it will subtract the baseline. Okay, now this is your, now you can see your baseline is almost horizontal. Now you have to find this peak. Currently no peak is there, number of peaks is 0, so you just click on find peak. Okay, it is finding 3 peaks. One is our desired peak and these 2 peaks are not desired, so I have to remove these peaks, extra peaks. So how can I filter the peak? Instead of auto thresholding, I can do the manual thresholding, and see my required or desired peak is much larger than these 2 peaks, so I can increase the threshold value, threshold height value, so that these 2 peaks will be filtered out. Threshold value means below that particular value no peak will be selected. Okay, so right now this threshold value is 20%. Let me do it 50% and find it again. Okay, so at 50% only my desired peak is remaining, and 2 we can check whether 40% is fine. Okay, at 40% is also, at 30%. Okay, at 30% this peak is coming, so increase little bit, 35%, this peak gone. 33%, this peak is there. 34%, okay, 35% peak gone. So that means threshold value 35% is the most appropriate. If you make it 50, even though it doesn't matter, as long as only one peak is selected. Now what is here? Okay, some more information is available. Finding peak finding settings. So in peak finding settings, what you can do, if you select, because my endothermic peak is on the downward side, so if I select the negative peak and let me make it 20 as it was earlier, then okay. Okay, let me tell you. I again change this threshold value to 20, and these 2 peaks are also included in peak list. Now in peak finding setting, there is option direction of this peak. My desired peak, which is the melting peak, it is in the endothermic direction, downward side, means this is a negative peak, whereas these two peaks are on the positive side, means on the exothermic side, so they are on the positive side. So I can also eliminate these two peaks by telling the origin that I am interested only in the peak which is in the downward side or the negative side. So if I click direction only negative and select find peak, so I'll find only this peak because no other peak is on the downward side. So either way, either you do like this or you change the threshold value, you have to find only the desired peak and you have to eliminate rest other undesired peak from the list. Then go to next, and it will ask finally what output you are looking for. Okay, now you can see this is the ROI, region of interest. This window is representing the region of the interest and it is considering this peak, from where this peak is getting started and where this peak is ending. So this window is covering the entire peak. Okay, now it is asking me what desired output I want. So obviously peak area I want. Percent area means how much is the percent of this. So I'm not interested in percent area, so just remove. It is asking row index x begin. X begins means at this point what is the temperature value of the x at the beginning, and ending x, the value of the x at the end means what is the temperature at the end of this peak. So this will be Tm end and this value will be Tmi initial. Okay, let it be there. Peak height, peak center, and some other full width, half mean value. So actually I'm not interested in this, so let us remove. Okay. So this is done. I am basically interested in the peak area. So peak area is in our list. Some other values are also in the list, but our prime objective is the peak area. So you have to make sure that peak area is checked before moving to finish. Now just click finish. As the moment you will click finish, you will find excuse me, one should minus. Okay, the moment you will click finish, you will find that there is another sheet being added to my book 1. This is my book 1 where my data is in sheet 1. So the moment you will finish, the results, integration results will appear in another sheet adjacent to it. Okay, so index 1 means only one peak is available, and this is the area 14.74577. Don't worry about this negative sign. This negative sign is just telling me that this peak is on the downward side or endothermic side. So we are basically interested in the magnitude of this value. Okay, and as I told you, some other values like x begin, this peak begins, melting starts at 134.622 degrees centigrade, and melting will end at 185.6 degrees centigrade. Then the center or the peak melting temperature that usually we are representing as Tm or Tf is 172.622 degrees centigrade, and height of this curve is 0.80607. Okay, so basically I am interested in this value. So this value is 14.74577. So this is the value of the area under this curve, and the unit of this will be, what will be the unit of this? Just recollect, unit of the area under this curve will be watt degree centigrade per gram. Okay, so I have to divide with heating rate. I have calculated area under the melting peak equal to 14.74577, and I have to divide it with my heating rate. My heating rate is how much? My heating rate is 10 degree per minute. So first of all, let me convert 10 degree per minute into degree centigrade per second. So 10 degree per minute means, into convert per second, you have to divide it by 60. So this is coming 0.1666666. Okay, so I have to divide. Okay, now clear. So what is my value which is coming? Area 14.74577, 14.74577 divided by 0.1666666. So 88.47 joules per gram is my heat of melting or heat of fusion for this particular molded specimen. Okay, now in order to calculate the percentage crystallinity, what I have to do? I have to use this formula. My delta HF value is 88.47. I have to divide this value with the standard value for the polypropylene, 207, and multiplied by 100. So let me divide this value by 207 and multiply it with 100. So my crystallinity, percentage crystallinity of the molded sample is coming out to be 42.74%. Okay, so this is how we can calculate the percentage crystallinity from my DSC data. Okay, fine. So this was the calculation for my first heating curve. Okay, now let me calculate I can change the name or rename also. Can I rename? Okay. Okay, I don't think rename option. Name and comments. Okay, integration peak. I can write as integration peak underscore first heating. Okay, just to have the idea. This is the first heating. Now let me repeat this analysis for second heating. So what I have to do, I have to select the second heating data column, which is by, and click plot line, and this is my second heating data plot. Just see the difference. My first heating curve was getting started from 26.622 degrees centigrade, and my second heating plot, this is the second heating plot, it is getting started from 80 degrees centigrade, because I programmed my DSC to start second heating from 80 degrees centigrade. So this is the melting peak for second heating data. Okay, so I'm going to integrate or to find out the area under this curve. Again, I'll go to analysis, peak and base analysis, peak analyzer, dialog box. This time I'll be little faster. Okay, so integrate peak, I'll go next, baseline user defined. Okay, anchoring point, everything is fine. Next, snap to spectrum, and add some point. Oh, I can add point. I can add some point here. Double click, some point here, done. So these points are added. Now let me rearrange these points, anchoring points. So I can rearrange these anchoring points. I should make a space. So this is just left click, drag and leave. So like this, and you have to put anchoring points especially where curve is changing its slope. Okay, see here my curve is changing slope, so I am keeping my anchoring point close to change in the curve where curve is changing its slope. Here curve is not changing that much slope, so anchoring point may be little far away. It's possible. And this anchoring point somewhere here, and this anchoring point should be here. So now this way I am covering entire melting peak. So I'm done. Next, okay, this is done. Next, auto subtract baseline and rescale. Next, okay, find the peak, only one peak. Fortunately I am getting only one peak here, so that's acceptable to me. Then I'll move next. So next I'm basically interested in the peak area, so I'll leave other information and I'll click finish. Okay, okay. Now this time the area is coming 15.46, and in my first hitting curve the area was 14.7. so you can see that area is increased in the second hitting. So what is it meaning is that when your area is increasing, area under the curve is increasing, means your crystallinity is increasing. So in second heating your crystallinity data is increasing. That's mean your material is more crystalline, but because of processing you are getting sample which is less crystalline as compared to material. So I can change the name as my integration peak second heating. This just to recollect. So now let me calculate the percentage crystallinity from the second heating data. So from the second heating data, my area under the curve is 15.46366 divided by the heating rate, which is 10 degrees centigrade per minute, and when we'll convert 10 degrees centigrade per minute into degree centigrade per second, it is going to be 0.166666 degrees centigrade per second. So 92.78 is the heat of melting or heat of the fusion. 92.78 joules per gram is the heat of the fusion or heat of the melting obtained from the second heating curve. Now to calculate the crystallinity for the second heating data, I have to divide the value of delta HM or delta HF with delta HM naught value, and in this case delta HM naught is 207 multiplied by 100. So my percentage crystallinity is coming 44.82 degrees centigrade, 44.82%. Okay, so you can see the difference. The crystallinity of the molded specimen calculated from the first heating curve was 42.74%, whereas the crystallinity of the material is 44.82%, which is calculated from the second heating curve. Fine. Now in my third example, I'll calculate the crystallinity from heat of crystallization. Okay, so to calculate crystallinity from heat of crystallization, what we can do, just go back to our sheet number 1 where is my data is located, and this is my cooling data, because crystallization peak is in cooling data. So I'll select cooling data, right click, plot, line, and this is my cooling curve. Okay, I want to calculate area under this crystallization peak. Okay, you can see this crystallization is starting somewhere around 130 degrees centigrade and it is ending up somewhere around 100 degrees centigrade. Okay, to calculate area under the crystallization peak, again we'll go to analysis, peak and baseline, peak analyzer, open dialog box. This is my open dialog box. Just a minute. Okay, again integrate peak is my goal. Next, baseline, user defined, snap to spectrum. Okay, this is fine. Next, I can add anchoring point. I think one should be here and some here and one more here, one more here. Fine. So these anchoring points is being added. Now modify them to relocate just as close as the location where my crystallization is beginning. Then this line is almost horizontal, so not much anchoring points are needed. Okay, this and it should go somewhere here and this should go somewhere here. Okay, so I am done. I have added and corrected the anchoring points. Next, auto subtract baseline and auto rescale, check, and now go to next, find the peak. So there is only one peak at 118 degrees centigrade, so peak crystallization temperature is 118 degrees centigrade. Okay, so I'll go next, and again I am interested only in the peak area, so I'll finish. The moment I'll finish, I am getting this integration result. Let me change the name. Integration peak cooling. Okay, and this time I am getting area 16.60692. Okay, so let me calculate the value of delta HC. This is the value of area under the curve. This is not the delta HC value. When I'll divide this value with cooling rate, then I'll get the delta HC value. So to obtain the delta HC value, 16.60692 divided by cooling rate. Cooling rate is again 10 degree per minute. So in terms of second, it will be 0.16666 seconds. Okay. So my delta HC is 99.64 joules per gram. 99.64 joules per gram. Okay. So now if I want to calculate the percentage crystallinity, now this time I am using heat of crystallization, so I'll use this formula. So percentage crystallinity is delta HC, which is coming somewhere 99, divided by delta HC naught, and the standard delta HC naught value for isotactic polypropylene is 163. Okay, multiplied by 100, so I have to divide this value with 163. So this is coming 0.61129. Now multiply it with 100, it will be 61.13%. Correct? So if you just recollect, typically your polypropylene material is somewhere 60% crystalline, 60-65% crystalline, and here we are getting value somewhere 61.12%. okay, so we can calculate the percentage crystallinity either by using heat of fusion data or heat of crystallization data, and there may be some difference in these two values of crystallinity calculated from delta HC or delta HF. So according to your research and your literature survey, you can use any of these method for calculation of percentage crystallinity. Okay, fine. Okay, I think I have explained everything. And okay, this is a cooling peak. Okay, what else I should tell you? Okay, now let me tell you one shortcut method to calculate area under the peak. Okay, this is my original data. I am going to calculate the area under the curve of first heating curve using gadget. Okay, so for that I have to plot. This is my plot, and I'll go to the gadgets, and here I'll select quick peak. So this is my quick peak dialog box. Okay, so this is asking me the range where my region of interest ROI is there. So it is just considering from 52 to 157, which is not right. My region of interest, let's say 130 to 190. Okay, depending upon the size of my peak, I can see my peak is somewhere at this location 130 and 190. So the entire peak will come inside the region of interest. Okay, then this baseline is also fine. Find peaks, you go to find peaks, and direction, you select the negative direction, and okay, negative direction display. Okay, area, baseline, output and quantities. What quantity you want? Peak ID, row ID, peak area. So I don't want height, I don't want all these things. Peak ID, and that's it. Okay, and so here let me click OK. See, automatically this is finding this peak. Obviously this time, according to me, this line should be like this. So some reduction in the peak area is there. So anyway, let us check how much the value is coming. So just click on this arrow and click on new output. So another, this is the peak area. So this time peak area is coming 11.72965, which is lesser than the peak area calculated using peak analyzer. How much we have calculated using the peak analyzer for the first hitting? This is there, 14.74577. Okay, and using the quick peak gadget, how much I am getting? I am getting 11.72965. So let me calculate the percentage crystallinity using this data. So how much is this data? 11 points, 11 point, bring it here, 11.72965. This is the peak area, and I have to divide it by the cooling rate, by the heating rate, which is 10 degree per minute, and this is coming out to be 0.1666 degree per second. So this value is 70.377. So this is the value of delta HF, and I have to divide it with delta HF naught value for the polypropylene, which is 207. So let me divide it by 207 and multiply it with 100. So this time my crystallinity is coming 33.99, or we can say 34%. So using the gadget tools, I am getting much error as compared to my peak analyzer tool. Through the peak analyzer, crystallinity for first hitting curve was 42.74%, whereas using gadget tool, quick peak tool, I am getting only 34%. So there is a error. Okay, so I'll prefer to use peak analyzer. However, when the peak area is not very crucial and you have to calculate many peaks, you can opt to go for quick peaks gadget tools, but preference should be given to peak analyzer because it is more accurate. Okay, so I hope I have explained each and everything, and I hope now you will be able to calculate the percentage crystallinity confidently and accurately. So thank you very much for your patient hearing.